Alright. How to trim a brisket. Two different ways. Get rid of all the points and make it aerodynamic. Kind of round everything off. This method, you're actually going to have a lot of waste. So you're going to try to save the leaner parts. Be able to grind this stuff for hamburger or use it for sausage. This is actually a pretty good one. Doesn't taper too badly. Sometimes you have to take a lot more off if it tapers really thin. Kind of take all this off so your seasoning adheres better, so you have better bark. So this is going to seem really excessive to some people, but we don't waste anything. We use all of this for hamburger and sausage. Normally I would kind of lean this stuff up as I go. Maybe even save the fat for tallow, but for time's sake, just doing it quickly. All the stuff that gets kind of brown like that is actually just from it being heated when they seal the cryovac. There's actually nothing wrong with it. You can still use it in your hamburger. It's just slightly cooked. Try to do that in one fluid motion whenever you do cut, where you don't end up with all these grooves. Cut all this off where you can see where all the muscle separates. It's your flat and then your point. Flat being your leaner slicing end, point being the moist end or fatty end you order at a barbecue restaurant. There's two different ways where you can just trim this down closely like we just did, or you can actually peel the muscle back and take this fat fist out. We actually have a second brisket. We're going to do it both ways so you can kind of get an example of both. That right there is not really ideal. You actually don't want to scalp it. You want to go like a quarter of an inch or an eighth of an inch still on there, but careful not to actually expose the meat itself. You want a nice fat cap on the back. Kind of protects the brisket while it cooks. So shark fin I usually just cut off. Same thing on the back side. You don't really want anything that's pointed or flaring out that's going to burn during the cook. While this seems excessive, it's also going to keep you from having any waste. Every bit of this brisket, once it's smoked, will be usable and sliceable. You don't have to watch your guests throw any of your hard work in the trash because it's just a poorly cooked chunk of fat. Kind of got a seam line there. If you just kind of carefully make a cut to where you can kind of see where it separates, just kind of nick it with your knife to peel it back. We're going to peel it back all the way, just enough to cut this fat fist out. Just about that far is probably good because all of this is just a giant chunk of fat. Pretty much it on that one. That's you know, you want to leave some of that fat in there. I mean, you're going to end up with quite a bit of waste when you do these excessive trims like this, but again, it's going to make the cook go much better. Everything that you cook is going to be sliceable and usable. Man, it's not going to go to waste. It'll be used for hamburger, beef tallow. Peel that back. Nicely rounded, no points. It's actually a prime grade brisket. That one's for an order, but we're going to do another one to show you the second way. I usually make my cut right on the fat fist there. That way you don't cut into any of the meat or score it. This one may not have quite as much waste because it's actually a choice. The higher the grade, the better the meat, but it's also gonna cause a lot more waste. Again, trying to make your cuts in one swipe without leaving a bunch of scores or nicks in it. Just make it look a lot prettier too. Good sharp knife will help with this tremendously. Again, rounding out all those points. This was actually a poor one to pick for this style of trimming. We're gonna leave the fat in this one because you can do that, especially if you like the fat. Like I personally like the fatty end. That's the best part, and I'll leave the fat in. It just kind of depends on the brisket. This is one where I would probably go in there and dig at least some of it out, because it's also the thickness from the flat and the point is pretty big difference. But you always put your point closest to the fire because it's gonna hold up to the heat much better because of the fat and because it's always the thickest end. That's your shark fin again. I handle a knife daily. Ideally, you guys probably don't want to cut towards yourself. Yeah, this one, got quite the fat fist in there. But still, this is one way of doing it where you just kind of shape it as best you can while still leaving that fat fist in there. Or you can go in there and open it up. It's just kind of personal preference. As you see, the opening it up, taking it out method made it a lot more consistent with thickness throughout the brisket. Again, this little part right here where you see brown on there, that's still usable meat. That's just where it gets kind of slightly cooked from where they heat it up when they seal the cryovac. But I would still take it off because it's probably not gonna bark up very good. It's already kind of cooked. The seasoning's not gonna adhere to it very good. But no points, everything's rounded. That's two different ways to trim a brisket. Just kind of, once you get done, you can always go back and give it another once over, like right there. Decide if you want to take that out or not, leave it in. Kind of an art. They can take 10 minutes or an hour, just depends on how many briskets you trimmed and how detailed you want to go with it. That's two ways to trim a brisket.